Hello and welcome to my guide on how to ride the GranGuanche bikepacking event in the Canary Islands. Now firstly, apologies for butchering the pronunciation of GranGuanche. I'm sure that's not 100% right, but my Spanish isn't that good. But the GranGuanche is, well, the name kind of lets you know what it is. It's a bikepacking event across Canary Islands. Now the Canary Islands are a small sort of chain of islands. As you can see here, close to the African coast, just off West Sahara and Morocco. And I think there's 7 or 8 islands, and the GranGuanche crosses 5 of those islands. So yeah, I'm going to give you a bit of a guide on what to expect, how to ride the event, and just kind of use my experience of riding it to, hopefully provide something useful. So the GranGuanche, as you can see, is run by a guy called Matteo Minali, an Italian guy. He actually lives on Lanzarote, and I mean this website. I mean, even if you're not interested in riding the event, I mean, I would implore you to go and have a look at the website GranGuanche.com. It's just beautiful. His photography is amazing. It's a really smart design, and there's a little bit about Matteo here and about the event. So the idea is inspired by ultra cycling events, adventures like Torino Nice Rally, and routes like the Montanas Vacias. And yeah, so it basically crosses the 5 islands. So there are 3 different events. So they're not technically races; they're Audaxes. So there's no kind of prize and stuff, but people do tend to try and see how fast they can go. So there's 3 different ones. There's the trail event, which is normally in December. So this is the event I did. This was the inaugural edition, and it's kind of more suited to a mountain bike. Well, certain sections are. There's also the road event, which is January. So this video is not going to be very relevant for the road event because I was doing the trail event, obviously, and there's no way you could do the trail on a road bike. And then in March, there is also the gravel event. Now, actually, the routes of the gravel and the trail are pretty similar. So this video could be used as a guide for either one. There are a few extra sections in the trail where you'd probably go on the road in the gravel, but I think this will be really relevant. So for either of the two, it would be useful. For reference, on the event, I was riding my Mason In Search Of, which is kind of like a 2.9er gravel bike, fully rigid, 2-inch tire or 2.1-inch tires. It was a little bit underbiked on the sections of the trail, which made it the trail basically. But for the rest of the gravel, it was absolutely fine. So yeah, if you're on a hardtail for the trail, you'll be absolutely fine. If you're on a hardtail for the gravel, you'll be fine. If you're on a gravel bike, you'll be fine. And you could get through the trail on a gravel bike if you don't mind being careful on some descents and maybe walking a few little bits. So I'm going to split this guide into 5 separate videos, basically for the 5 islands that you cover. So the first island is Lanzarote. So as you can see, I've got the route up on Ride GPS. I'm not sponsored by them or anything like that. It's just kind of what I use because I quite like the format of it. So yeah, as you can see by the profile here, it's relatively hilly to start with. I'd say the Canaries are basically big volcanoes, so some of them are mountainous. You're going to get above 2,000 meters later on. Lanzarote is a gentle introduction, I'd say. It gets hillier as you get further along. So the race starts in a little town called Orzola, and basically you have to kind of get there under your own steam after the sign-on. And the trail race starts, I think it started at 10 PM when I did it. So essentially, if you're going to be going at a fairly decent pace, you're probably going to ride Lanzarote pretty much all in the dark, or certainly the vast majority of it. Now, for reference, the pace I was riding, myself and actually Sophie and Sahili, we decided we were going to ride it kind of together. We weren't really going to get stuck in and go full gas all the time. But we rode fairly hard in the day, but then we kind of like stopped for lunch and we decided we didn't want to camp. We were going to stay in hotels as and when that was applicable. So yeah, it meant for some hard days riding, but we always had a decent sleep and normally a decent meal as well. There were guys who were much faster and they were racing the ferries between the islands, and eventually you kind of get ahead of each other on the ferries. But generally, there is a regrouping, so you always see a lot of people with the first 2 or 3 islands, and then there'll always be a small group that might say get ahead on the the ferry ahead of you later on, and then essentially the kind of the races up the road. But I wouldn't think of this as a race. It's just an incredible bikepacking route, and yeah, hopefully I can show you a bit about it now. So the start, as I said, was at 10 p.m. and I'll show you this little video here. This was the start. When was it? I did it 2022. Kind of my first trip out after the pandemic, and it starts in a little town. Sleepy little fishing village, probably not much goes on most of the day, and yeah, we were off. A few little loops through the town and then up the first climb. So as you can see by the profile here, you're going off-road fairly quickly, and you're pretty soon going onto one of the highest points of the island. So once you leave the little fishing village there, or Zola, you get into the off-road fairly quickly, and it's kind of like just double track. As you can see, there's loads of people, loads of dust. I mean, it's quite cool. This was November, so if you live in the UK or Northern Europe like I do, it's a very welcome break, and it's nice to get a bit of heat. We were riding in shorts and arm warmers and like a gilet, so you don't need that much clothing on these two islands. However, later on, you are going up to 2,000 meters, and you know, things can change there. So you do have to bear that in mind. Once you get off the initial kind of dirt roads, there is a bit of a kind of a steep climb, and it does get a little bit more technical. Now, as you can see here, it's you're kind of like fighting against loose rocks and stuff. So you just have to be a bit careful. You can see my bars kind of like just swapping around a bit, and yeah, it's a bit of a slog. You've got to try and get past other riders if you're faster, so you can get held up a little bit here, and yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's incredible views. I mean, you can see from the map here, you're on the high point. There should be views across the sea and the other little islands, but starting at 10 p.m. You don't see much. So unfortunately, my videos are all going to be at night. I'd imagine if you started during the day, it would be incredible. But I think the reason that the starting of the night is it gives you the time to get the ferry in the morning, get the first ferry in the morning, which I think was 8 a.m., possibly 7 a.m. And then you can kind of, it sets you up for the other ferries for the other islands further down the line. So the top of that first climb, you're going up the climb, as you can see here. It's about 4 miles, and then you just go across the top on the ridge before you start kind of getting up to the next high point, as you get more into the centre of the island here, before you drop down to the coast. So yeah, it's a stiff climb to start with. The field soon spreads out, and essentially you just need to kind of ride your own pace. It's also worth noting that everything's going to be shut starting at 10 p.m. There is a little restaurant at the start line where a lot of people got a last meal before the off, but you need to be carrying all your food to get all the way through the island, if you're planning on doing it in one night. Water, you want to take 2 or 3 litres, I would have thought, but it's not too hot. It's warm enough to, you know, have your arms covered and your legs out, so you're not going to sweat too much, and it can be quite windy in Lanzarote, so bear that in mind as well. So once you get to the top, there's a load of kind of road sections. It's kind of rolling, a few climbs. As you can see, there's a nice group of us having a chat, and it's all nice and chilled. And yeah, there's no traffic or anything, which makes it even better. You're kind of going on and off road a little bit. Some of the roads they show on the map as a road, they're actually quite wide dirt roads. So yeah, it's a real nice start. And then you drop downhill. This is a cool little descent down this big, from the top at kind of 20 miles. Few nice hairpins. It's kind of it's a rough double track, so you just want to be a little bit careful. But yeah, if you're careful, you'll be fine. If you're going too hard, and like especially on a gravel bike, and hit a rock too hard, you could puncture. So you know, you don't want to be changing a tyre at midnight, that's for sure. Once you get down, you kind of follow the coast around. Now I'm not sure 100% if this bit is taken on the gravel version, but certainly on the trail version, you go around the coast here. And it's kind of like, I guess it's a bit of a hiking path at times, a bit of a double track at times, some sandy sections. You might be on and off. You can see these kind of stones. It's like on the edge of the coast here. And in the dark, you can't always see the route you want to take that far ahead. So again, it's a bit slow going, but it's not too bad. And you know it's not going to last too long. And then you're going through a few little towns. Again, nothing's open. It's all kind of shut, because it's by this point you're probably 2 hours in, 30 miles or so, midnight. So you're not going to find anywhere to resupply, which is fine. It's kind of what you expect. But there we go. Then you kind of cross the middle of the islands. Now I don't have much footage of this, but it's kind of like some tarmac and some big double tracks as you're kind of going across the middle here. It's not really like a massive climb as such. It's just kind of like a real long drag, and you do go through some pretty spectacular volcanic scenery. However, it's dark, so you can't see anything, and it's really weird because it's like the dark, like volcanic sand. It absorbs loads of light, so you can't really tell what's what, and every now and again you get a bit of a shadow. But there is one tricky section up there. It's kind of like you're going through the lava fields, and you're kind of on like a raised bank between, I guess they're fields. I couldn't really tell. I think they grow stuff up there. I guess that the soil is pretty fertile. So you can see here I'm following Sofian, and it's kind of tricky, and the rocks are kind of sharp, and there's little cactuses and prickly bushes. So you kind of don't want to get it wrong, because if you fall off and topple, it's going to hurt. If you catch a bush, it's going to hurt, and you don't want to like puncture your tyre. So you just got to take your time, and you can probably hear the tyres. They're just kind of like sticking a little bit. I'm sure it'd be much easier in the daylight, but just at night, it's just because you can't see that far ahead, it can be a little bit tricky. So yeah, that's kind of in the middle here, and then you're kind of on the last little leg. Now I'm not 100% sure if this is in the gravel or not. I suspect it might not be. You drop down and do this tricky little coastal path. I didn't really have much footage of this section. That's normally a sign that it's tricky and a bit of a pain. There's loads of short, sharp, kind of little ups and downs, and it's just a little bit tricky to ride, and you have to concentrate quite a lot. But then you get back onto the kind of more established touristy bits. It's a real weird juxtaposition. You're kind of in the middle of nowhere, it's pitch black, and then suddenly you're on the edge of a tourist resort as you roll into town. And obviously each stage finishes at a ferry port as you go on to the next island. So we got in, it must have taken 8 or 9 hours to get there. So the clock stops. So you do get time for this event, and the clock stops at the ferry ports. We were kind of being a bit more chilled, so we didn't actually stop at the ferry port. We stopped in this little cafe just outside. It was kind of like the workers' cafe, so it was open at sort of probably 6ish in the morning, and we got a bit of a refuel. If we'd have just pushed through, we would have been an hour quicker finishing the stage officially. But we're about 50 meters, 100 meters from the ferry port here. So that's that would be just on the quay here. So we're talking like literally opposite the ferry port. You can see where the little dot is there. And then we rolled it into the ferry port. A few guys kind of got there ahead of us. A few guys overtook us while we were at the cafe, and everyone decided to sleep there. So there's a little shelter. It was quite amusing. Bodies everywhere, and you can buy your tickets at the little booth on the right hand side there. I think that's Marco, Erwin on the floor, a few others. Everyone just kind of trying to get their sleep after basically an all-nighter, which was pretty funny. So yeah, we found that very amusing. And then you're on the first ferry, so the ferry goes, I think the first one is 8 AM. If you go on the GranGuanche website, there is loads of information. There's a full ferry timetable, and you pretty much end up planning your whole days by ferries. So this is the ferry. Myself and Sofian just lounged and got a sofa and tried to get some sleep. And then it's on to the next island, which is Fuerteventura. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and in the next one I'll do the guide to Fuerteventura. So don't forget to like and subscribe if you don't want to miss that, and tune in for the next one. Thanks for watching.